All right, let's talk about courage. What is it, really? To get to the heart of it, we're actually going to start with its total opposite fear. We're going to follow a real story to see what happens in our minds when a simple game suddenly becomes a life defining moment.
And it all starts right here. Picture it, a bunch of kids, hiding, playing a game. And then a voice just slices through the quiet. It's a warning, but it's also a cry for help. Right then and there, the game is over. A real threat just walked onto the scene.
So the stage is set. One friend is caught. Worse, he's been hit by an adult. The others are hiding, but now they know. In an instant, they've gone from kids just messing around to witnesses in a really dangerous situation. And in that moment, their brains are screaming just one thing: survive. Now, before we can even begin to talk about courage, we have to look at what it's up against. And that is the raw, primal, and totally paralyzing grip of panic. So, our narrator, he's not alone. He's hiding with a friend. But instead of finding strength in numbers, he's suddenly staring down a second crisis. His buddy is just coming apart at the seams, totally eaten up by fear. So now the narrator has to deal with the threat outside and the panic right next to him. So why does that happen? You have the exact same situation, but one person's mind is racing, trying to find a solution, while the other just completely shorts out. What is going on inside our heads?
Well, there's a name for it. It's called an amygdala hijack. Basically, when your brain senses a major threat, the amygdala, that's your brain's emotional command center, it hits the big red button and completely overrides your rational thinking. It's a survival instinct, flooding you with stress hormones, getting you ready to act. But it can also just jam up your ability to think clearly. And this hijack sends you down one of three roads. You've got fight, which is confronting the threat. You've got flight, which is, getting the heck out of there. But then there's the third one, freeze. And that's the paralysis, the indecision that we're seeing in the narrator's friend. His brain is so overloaded with danger signals that he just can't compute the next step. He's stuck. And there's a good reason the friend's panic was so intense. It's a concept called risk dilution. Research shows that facing a threat by yourself feels way, way more dangerous than facing it with other people. Remember, these kids were split up. They were a tiny unit of two, which means the perceived danger for both of them was just through the roof. So you've got one person totally frozen by fear. The other isn't. And in that tiny gap between panic and action, a really critical decision gets made. This is where the moral compass starts to spin. I mean, it really boils down to this, doesn't it? This is one of the most fundamental choices a person can face. Save your own skin or risk everything for someone else. It's a decision that happens in a heartbeat, but it can define who you are for the rest of your life.
And this isn't just about being brave in general. It's a very specific kind of bravery that researchers call moral courage. It's all about acting on what you believe is right, even when you know there could be a serious cost. And a huge part of it is standing up to someone who has more power than you. In this case, kids against a grown man. Psychologists have actually broken down how we get there. It's like a 5-step journey from just being a bystander to actually helping. First, you see what's happening. Second, you realize, whoa, this is a real emergency. Third, and this is the big one, you feel a sense of personal responsibility. Fourth, you have to believe you can actually do something. And then finally, there's this split-second calculation where the thought of doing nothing suddenly feels way worse, way heavier than the physical risk of stepping in. And that feeling, that sense of responsibility, it completely transforms an individual choice into this powerful statement about group loyalty. And it's a principle that you see echoing throughout history. And right here, this is the moment the narrator makes his choice, and he says it out loud. He just completely rejects the idea of saving himself and reframes the entire situation. It's not about two boys against grown men anymore. It's about being an unbreakable unit. He's turning raw fear into a strategy built on solidarity. This idea feels so timeless for a reason, right? Alexandre Dumas made it famous in The Three Musketeers, but this concept of absolute, unquestioning loyalty, it's way, way older than that. It's a declaration that the survival of the group comes first. And this idea has popped up everywhere. Decades before the Musketeers, a version of it showed up in a letter from 1618 during a conflict in Bohemia as this vow of total loyalty. Then, fast forward to 1902, and you find it inscribed in the dome of the Swiss Federal Palace, becoming the unofficial motto of a whole country. And there's some powerful psychology behind this. You'd think a shared threat would tear a group apart.
But what research shows is that often it does the exact opposite. It can actually strengthen social bonds, ramp up mutual support, and forge this incredibly intense sense of togetherness. The danger, weirdly enough, makes the group stronger. So what happens when these two kids, one driven by this incredible moral courage and the other kind of being pulled along by it, finally walk out of the shadows to face their fear? The strategy worked. The aggressors weren't faced with one scared kid anymore. They were faced with two, acting as a single unit. And in the face of that unified defiance, they backed down. The kids won, not by fighting, but simply by refusing to abandon their friend. Their unity was their power. And this is the lesson, learned in the most real way imaginable. The narrator basically says, talk is cheap. Bravery isn't some trait you just have. It's a choice you make when everything's on the line. And for him, loyalty, that's not even a choice. It's just an absolute. And that's really the core of this whole thing, isn't it? We all like to think we know who we are, but the truth is, we don't. Not really, until the moment trouble arrives. A crisis just strips away all the noise, and what's left behind is the truth of your character. And that kind of leaves us all with one final, unavoidable question. We've walked through the anatomy of panic, the calculus of courage, and the power of loyalty. But when it's not abstract anymore, when that warning call rings out for you, who are you going to be?